Hey everybody, we are joined by Jon-Eric Sullivan, the Packers Vice President of Player Personnel. Jon-Eric, could you put that in layman's terms? What does that job mean?
Sure. So at this point, as the Vice President of Player Personnel, a lot of what I do is manage and oversee both personnel departments, both college and pro, make sure that our process is whole and sufficient and efficient. And then manage those that are kind of the boots on the ground, if you will, the scouts, the pro scouts, the college scouts, and just make sure we're running efficiently and that we are prepared for the draft in April and that we are prepared for free agency when that comes around, during free agency season, so that we, in terms of player acquisition, we're ready to go and ready to fire when the opportunity presents itself.
Approaching your 20th season with the Green Bay Packers, that's somewhat unusual in the personnel business, is it not?
It is, and I think that some of it, I would like to think some of it is a testament to myself and what I've been able to accomplish here. But a lot of it is I've been very fortunate to be in a great organization with great people, a very stable organization. I've learned from some of the best: Ted Thompson, Brian Gutekunst, John Dorsey, Reggie McKenzie, John Schneider. I could go on and on. So a lot of it is just good fortune on my end. The ability to learn as a young scout, put those things to the test as I've come through my career and been able to hang around. So very, very grateful for that.
How'd you get your start?
So I grew up as a son of a coach. My dad's a longtime college and NFL coach, and when I got done playing in college, I thought for a while I wanted to go into corporate America, and that lasted for about 3 years.
GMAC?
GMAC, sure was, and it was a great company, good people, but I realized pretty early on, Larry, that I missed ball and I wanted to be around it. Obviously, my dad had some connections within the game, and I was fortunate enough to land an internship in 2003 here for training camp. And then they called me back in spring of '04 and hired me full time. And since then, I've kind of worn just about every hat in the personnel department, from intern to scouting assistant. I was our representative for NFS, National Football Scouting, for some years. Then was moved on to an area scout for us, college director of player personnel, and then where I'm at now. So it's been a slow, steady climb for the last 20 years, but a very good climb, one I'm very grateful for.
So going way back, you're a football guy. Why personnel and not coaching?
You know what? I think you got to know who you are. I think I'm a better evaluator than I am a patient teacher, if you will. I thought for a while I may want to get into coaching, but kind of once I started this in the intern process, I realized that I really enjoyed it. And quite frankly, I thought I was probably better at it. My skill set was better suited to evaluate and help acquire players versus teaching players.
Biggest influence, if there is one, on your professional career?
You know what? If I'm being honest, probably Brian Gutekunst. I've been chasing him kind of the whole time I've been here. He was, when I came on, he was the Southeast area scout, and then I kind of, as I rose through the ranks, I then became the Southeast area scout when he became the director of college scouting. And then I became the director of college scouting when he became the director of player personnel. And then I became the director of player personnel. So I say that to say, like, I've kind of been chasing him, but I've always had tremendous respect for his work. He was obviously raised in this business from Ron Wolf and Ted Thompson, two of the legendary GMs, two of the best that have ever done it, both Hall of Fame worthy, in my humble opinion. But he has taken so much that he's learned from and applied it to his trade and his craft, and I've learned from him. I was not here with Ron. Obviously, the stories and the lessons are still here today, but I was here forever with Ted, for a long time with Ted, and if it wasn't Brian, it would be Ted. But I would say I know Ted was kind of Brian's mentor, if you will, and Brian's been that for me. I think Brian's one of the most well-rounded whole GMs in this league, and I think he's proven that. I mean, the guy has been through a pandemic. He's had to move on from a coach. He's had to move on from a legendary quarterback, and I think his success and our ability to acquire players and the success we've had in his tenure, and not only that, but the way that he has handled the situations he's been in, has proven what he is and what he's worth in that seat. And so I have a lot of respect for him and kind of been chasing him the whole time.
Jon-Eric, do you have an overall philosophy like a set of guiding principles in how you go about this business?
Yeah, I think, I've always been taught that the draft is your lifeblood, if you will. You build through the draft. It's a young man's game. You want to make sure that you're acquiring young, talented players that fit your culture. I think you supplement through free agency. You look at what Ron did with Reggie White, what Ted did with Charles Woodson. I think those are dangerous waters to tread in all the time, because typically teams aren't moving on from good players that are healthy and good in the locker room. They're trying to keep those themselves. But I think you got to build through the draft. I think you supplement free agency. I think you always have to be assessing your quarterback situation, making sure you have a trigger man that you can win with. And I think that you have to identify your core players within your team at all levels, your difference makers, your starters, your role guys, and the guys that are really good within their role and fit your culture. I think you have to do everything in your possibility to retain those players and make sure that you're keeping that together so that you can have sustained success over time.
Can you learn player evaluation, or is there somewhat of a mystical it? You either got it or you don't.
You know what? I think it's like a lot of things. I think some people are born with maybe a greater gift than others, but that's absolutely something that you can work at and get better at. We always say that in scouting, your time equals your Rolodex mentally, right? Like the more players I watch and the more players I evaluate, the more of a mental Rolodex I have, so that I can go and say, hey, look, this guy reminds me of that guy, and this guy was a good player. That only happens with time. You can't rush that. It has to be organic. It has to be something that happens as you go through your career. I do think the more reports that you read from people that have come before you, the more players you evaluate, that helps you sharpen your craft. It helps you sharpen your verbiage, your ability to paint a picture. We always say, if you're putting it on paper, if I'm a GM and I've never watched a down of this player and I read your report, I ought to be able to close my eyes and see them. You get better at that by reading other people's reports. So I say all that to say, yes, you can get better at it. There's like anything else in life. There's some that are just naturally more gifted than others, but it's definitely something that you can work at and get better at as you go through your career.
Does your line of work require a certain kind of courage? I mean, sometimes your opinion is not going to match the opinion of the room or the boss. Does it take a certain kind of courage?
Yeah, I think if we're all agreeing, nobody's thinking. You know what I mean? If I'm a decision maker and I got a bunch of guys sitting in the room that want to tell me what I want to hear, that's not very valuable to me. So to answer your question, yes, I think a lot of scouts, as they go through their career, they obtain that courage over time. It's really hard as a young man to sit in that room and go against the boss or somebody that's in a director position that has a heavy-handed opinion on something. But I think as you go through and you realize the importance of not sitting on the fence, doing the work, that's the most important thing. You do the work, you form your opinion, and then you stand by it unapologetically, respectfully, but unapologetically. And that's the value of a good scout. If we're all agreeing, nobody's thinking, and at the end of the day, you've done the work, and I want your opinion to help me make a decision. We may not agree, and that's okay, but at least I know where you stand.
Do you have to be a detail guy?
100%, you got to be a detail guy, and that's from going into school and obtaining the character. We want to talk to minimum 3 different people in a school. Sometimes it's 4 or 5 if things don't add up. But you're talking to strength coaches, position coaches, sometimes head coaches, athletic trainers, academic advisors. And within all that, you're getting different perspectives on these players away from the field, what kind of person they are, what kind of person are you adding to your culture. And you got to make sure you're in the details on that so that when you come back to the decision maker, you paint a very clear picture as to what you're buying. And then obviously within the game, when you're watching the tape and you're trying to identify his skill set, you want to make sure that in that report, that when you have to go back and reference that report or the decision maker is, that it is a clear picture of what that player or what your opinion of that player will be for your team, from the snap to the whistle, everything that his skill set provides for your football team to help you win games on Sundays.
Analytics, measurables, tangibles, intangibles, How do you balance all that?
Sure, the system that I was raised in, Larry, is at the end of the day, the tape is the most important thing. Like, you're acquiring football players. You're going to play the game of football on Sundays. Sure, analytics is in vogue right now, and it's helpful. But analytics has been part of the equation for years. 40 times, vertical jumps, short shuttles. That's analytic data. The way we do it is we always go off the tape. We then, our area scouts that go in, we want to listen to them, see what they have to say about the player and the person as we build the board. Analytics help us identify the outliers. Hey, we got a guy way up there, and the analytics are saying that maybe he's too high, or vice versa. We haven't given this guy enough appreciation, and the analytics say he should be way up the board. We need to go back and do some work on that. It helps us identify the outliers and maybe peel back the layers a little bit and go back and do some more work so that we're not missing high or low. But the analytics is not going to supersede the film.
Now, you, in your playing days, were an all-state player at 2 positions in high school, all-league at Gardner-Webb in college. Does your playing experience prove valuable in what you do today?
It does. Again, there's circumstance, right? There's nothing that I did per se, but I think growing up as a kid that had a father as a coach and just being around practice all my life, being in a locker room, some of those lessons that you get from that it's hard to even articulate, but just being around the game, I would start there, and then for sure, my college career, playing at 2 different levels, playing in the SEC, being fortunate enough to get a scholarship to the SEC and playing there for a couple of years, and then going down a level to Gardner-Webb, which is I still call it 1AA subdivision, and seeing the differences and realizing that, hey, you got good players in both places. But yeah, I would say, definitely my college career, how to navigate a locker room, how to identify players, how to identify culture, how to identify work ethic, and balance all that talent, work ethic, culture, and what that means to a team. It was certainly valuable for me.
Jon-Eric, what would you say is the most satisfying part of your job?
Winning. Yeah, winning. If you peel back the layers on that, I would say that to acquire a player, to do all the work, sometimes 2-3 years worth of work, you acquire a player, he is what you thought he would be, and then he goes out there on Sundays and he helps you play a vital role, and he plays a vital role in winning on Sundays. That's certainly is satisfying, especially when you stood on the table for a player. Yeah, but at the end of the day, we're all in this thing to win. It's not about me. It's not about the next guy. It's about us coming together, working our tails off, doing the best that we can for this organization to help us win championships.
Jon-Eric, the most challenging part of your job?
Early on, I would say the being away from home, especially if you have a family. You're on the road sometimes for 100, 150, 160 days as an area scout. I think there has to be a balance there, a discipline there, so that when you do get home, you can be present. I think you got to be disciplined in how you approach your day, typing your reports at night, so that when you come home, that work is done and then you can be home. I would say now at this point where I'm at, challenging but also rewarding, managing those underneath, helping those guys grow and get to where they want to go career-wise, all the while making sure that there's accountability in place and them understanding that, hey, we want to help you get where you want to go professionally, but at the end of the day, it's about you doing your job so that we can win on Sunday. It's not about growing you per se. You know what I mean? It all comes together.
Tell me about this Packer team. Where's it stand in terms of personnel?
I like it. I like the team. We're young. I think we're athletic. I think we have speed. Obviously, Jordan's going to come into his first year as a starter. We're confident there. Now he's got to go out and do it. But I like our team. If you pressed me, I would say you're probably going to see a pretty young, pretty athletic team. It's got some playmaking ability. That's going to take us lumps because we're young, we're inexperienced. But I know that we have the right people in place and the right talent in place. I would think you'd see us ramp up as the season progresses. As these young, talented players gain experience, I would think you'd see us, kind of hit the path running, mid to late in the season, and I think we're set up to win down the road as we get going here. And tremendous confidence in Jordan. He's doing everything right, and I think the guys are taking to him, and I think we'll have a good football team.
I've always wondered about this ever since I met you. Could you tell us about the Jon-Eric? Where does that come from?
I'm still wondering about that. I'm not sure why my parents did that to me. No, it's a. Yeah, I really don't. There's no real story to it. I think my parents just wanted something different. I know growing up, my mother couldn't stand when somebody called me John because she said there's a million Johns out there. At this point, nobody calls me John, but nobody calls me Jon-Eric either. It's either J.E. or Sully, which I'm okay with because Jon-Eric's a lot to spit out. I don't like introducing myself as Jon-Eric because I see people kind of tilt their head and wonder, like, is this your first and middle name? Is this your your whole first and last name, but there's no story to it, just what my parents decided to do. But at this point, it's Sully or J.E. with those that know me best.
Your professional life over the past 20 years, nothing but football. Jon-Eric, what do you like about the game? What is it about football?
I think it's, this is kind of cliche, but I also believe it to be very true. It's the most unique game because it's 11 people on one side of the ball. Everybody has to do their job or it doesn't work. You can, in basketball, also a great sport, not knocking basketball, but you can have one dominant player out there on the court and he can take over the game. You can have the best skilled players in the world and a tremendous quarterback, but if that right guard whiffs, the play's dead. I just think it's the ultimate team game. I think the physicality, the off-season work that come with it to build your body to get in position to sustain for 17 games. I just think there's a brotherhood and an accountability that if you're going to be on a successful team is unmatched in other sports. Now I'm biased, this is the sport I'm involved in, but I just think it's very different that way. I think it's pretty cool.
Greatest team sport ever invented. Jon-Eric Sullivan, one of the Packers' unsung heroes.